name is Natalie Nelson. I'm the director here at the Pence Gallery, and today I'm going to be talking about an exhibit we have here at the Pence. It's called 1968, the Folsom Redemption. And one reason why we brought it to this area is because, of course, the Folsom connection. It was over 50 years ago that Johnny Cash and his band played at Folsom Prison. They released the most amazing live album. It sold over 3 million copies and 6 million after Johnny Cash's death. So I would like to talk a little bit about how this amazing concert took place. So we'll start off with Johnny Cash's family. And for those of you who know a little bit about Cash, he grew up very poor in Arkansas. His dad was a sharecropper, and this is Roy, his dad. This is his sister Reba, and this is his mom Carrie. And Carrie Cash was an amazing woman because she played the guitar, she played the fiddle, she was really into music. She was a very Christian woman, she really believed in faith, and she was the one who really guided Johnny as a young boy. And John showed an amazing aptitude for music. From high school onwards, he really got focused on country western music. And so here we have him in 1968. He's at his parents' house in Las Casitas, which is down in Ventura County, down south. And he had moved out there from Memphis with his first wife, Vivian, and their children. Things are not going so well for Cash at this point in 1968. The previous year, it's estimated that he canceled about half of his concerts. And that was really due to his drug addiction. He had this kind of overwhelming addiction that started many years previous with amphetamines. And so those dried out his vocal cords, so he had to cancel a lot of concerts. He's also in the middle of a divorce. So he's trying to pull together a lot of aspects of his personal life, which were kind of in shambles at this point, as well as his musical career. He hadn't had a hit in many years. So he's decided to go to Folsom Prison, and I'll tell you a little bit about some of the people who make that possible. We're here at the Sacramento Executive Airport, and we have Johnny Cash, his Reverend Floyd Gressett, who's in the middle, and his dad, Roy Cash. And so this is on January 12, 1968. They fly up to Sacramento from Southern California. June Carter is also with him, Johnny Cash's band as well. And they also go with 2 reporters and photographers. And these are the people who've recorded a lot of the images we're going to be looking at today. So Dan Push is one, and the other gentleman, Gene Bealey, actually lives in Stockton right now, and he also was part of this group who goes to Folsom Prison and records not only what happened in terms of the words, but also these wonderful photographs. So we have Johnny Cash. He has decided to do this concert because he really believes in prisoners' rights. And he's done other concerts at prisons many times, starting in 1955 when he kind of first came on to the country western scene. And this idea of Folsom Prison really comes from a movie that he once saw, which was a fictional account from 1955 about 2 characters who were inmates at Folsom Prison. So he thought, this would be a great place to actually film this concert. But he couldn't get anyone at Columbia Records to agree to do it. Folsom Prison was, of course, seen as a very dangerous place. Why would you want to do a concert there? And people were really having a hard time believing that Cash could actually pull this off. But he really wants to do it, and he has a new producer who helps him do it, as well as his Reverend. So Floyd Gressett has connections at Folsom Prison, so he kind of manages to pull the strings to get Cash's appearance to take place. So next, we're going to go to Folsom Prison. So here we are outside the walls of Folsom Prison. Johnny Cash did this photo shoot before the concert. This was with Dan Push and Gene Bealey, and both of them at the time were employed by the Ventura Star paper. The Ventura Star actually really doesn't want to run this story after they put it together. Cash at that moment, was really seen as kind of a controversial figure. He did kind of crazy things, like he would drive his car too fast down a one-way street. He had been busted several times for drugs. He had also started a major forest fire. So he's not seen really as someone who you could rely on at that point. Here he is, though. We're at Folsom Prison. This is January 13th. And he's going to be doing a series of 2 concerts. These concerts are about 1,000 inmates each and form kind of the body of what becomes the concert album. So this photograph shows Johnny Cash outside the walls. Again, you can see the wall right here and the guard towers behind. And I forgot to mention that Folsom Prison Blues is one of Cash's earliest hits. It's actually from the 50s, and when they re-release it, it becomes the first single for the live album. And so, of course, that is why he's producing it there at the prison itself. Cash's reputation kind of as a little bit of an outlaw. A lot of people actually thought that he had done time in prison because of that song. It has this really hard-nosed line in it, you know, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. Cash actually had never been in prison. He had been in jail several times, again, for some of those infractions I talked about. But this is kind of his first time seeing behind the scenes at a prison for that one of his songs is actually based on. Here this photograph shows the yard of Folsom Prison. So we're inside one of the gates and you can see some of the inmates behind. This is kind of early morning, and we have June Carter on the right and Johnny on the left. And June Carter at this point is Johnny Cash's girlfriend. She's been touring with the band for about 6 years. And she plays her own songs as well as they form several duets. And here she is in this kind of very stern black dress. And I love some of the later photos because when they're playing at regular concert halls, she wears this very like wonderful flamboyant dress. Here she's really downplaying it. It's black, it's long, it's got this high collar. Apparently she wasn't very afraid to go to Folsom Prison, and she joked around with some of the prisoners. She was real lighthearted that day. And she was very supportive of Johnny's efforts to try to reform prisons, as well as to play in them for his series of concerts. We are here at the Folsom Prison cafeteria, which is where they are having the concert. And this is actually the opening band, the Statler Brothers. And after this, Carl Perkins plays. And these are kind of his 2 opening bands that Cash normally tours with. You can see the prisoners are all seated very respectfully. They're not jumping up and down, they're not screaming, they're being watched by some guards. And one thing that's interesting is Cash in his memoirs talks about this moment where he's at the side of the stage watching this band play, and he just has this moment of calm come over him. He said, "I knew this was it, my chance to make up for all the times I had messed up. Then suddenly I felt calm. There was something in their eyes that made me realize that everything was going to be okay. I felt I had something they needed." So Johnny Cash comes onto the stage with no introduction, and he basically just says, "Hi, I'm Johnny Cash," which is his famous kind of one-liner that he opens shows with. He sits down with his guitar and he starts to play by himself, and he launches into Folsom Prison Blues, his first song. And there's a section of Folsom Prison Blues in which the inmates kind of scream and laugh and kind of holler, and that actually was taped later and added on to Folsom Prison Blues. And it's that famous line where he says, "I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die." The prisoners were actually quite respectful of Johnny, and they really kept a distance and they politely clapped. And it was only when one of their own, GLEN SHERLEY, has his song played live that they really start kind of making noise and yelling and screaming. So here we have him right at the beginning of the concert. So here Johnny is singing with June Carter, and they're singing their song that had just been released a few months previously, which is called Jackson. They later go on to win a Grammy for the song, and it's a great duet. It's got a lot of energy to it. And June is brought on for only a couple songs. She even recites a poem and talks with all the inmates. And later she said to Gene Bealey, one of the reporters who was there, that the inmates really love Johnny because they feel like he's one of them. They can really relate to him. They know he's been in trouble with the law before, and they just don't feel that separation. And apparently at the concert there was so much great energy, and it was like this electricity in the air. And especially the first concert just went off really, really Here we have Johnny with his band, the Tennessee Three, and he's playing to the inmates again, but he's playing Greystone Chapel, which is the song that Glenn SHERLEY wrote. SHERLEY's an inmate at Folsom Prison, and somehow a tape had gotten out of that and had landed up in the hands of Floyd Gressett, who was his reverend. And so Cash is given this tape by his reverend, and he listens to it, and he's just amazed. He loves it. And it's a song about finding kind of a spiritual place amidst, all the inmates at Folsom Prison. And it's actually based on a real chapel at Folsom Prison. So he learns the words, he learns the song the night before, and then he performs it. And this is the only time they really get excited, and you can see people are jumping up and down. And apparently they did not tell Glenn SHERLEY that they were going to be playing it, but they just made sure he was sitting in the front row. So I thought that was a great story. So this photo is taken the night before the Folsom Prison concert, and he's in West Sacramento at the El Rancho Hotel. And Cash is just intrigued by the song, so he starts writing the words down. He's trying to memorize it, and so they're playing it that night in the rehearsal, and he's trying to do the song justice, as he said. And he really identified with the author of the song, Glenn SHERLEY, because Glenn's voice just sounded so beaten down, and Cash just says, we have to record this as a single tomorrow, so we're gonna learn it. So that was one case of him really wanting to be open to prisoners and their experience there at Folsom Prison. This is a photo of Johnny Cash with Glenn SHERLEY. SHERLEY gets to meet Cash after the concert, so he's really excited. And actually, Cash developed a bond with SHERLEY, and not only gives him royalties from the song, of course, that he wrote, but after SHERLEY gets out, he is the person to greet SHERLEY. He pays for SHERLEY's wedding. He also really tries to help him out in the music business. SHERLEY, unfortunately, is just really overwhelmed with things. He ends up committing suicide in 1978, which really kind of breaks Johnny's heart. But before this happens, in 1972, SHERLEY and Johnny go to Congress and actually testify on the effects of the criminal justice system on youngsters, such as Glenn SHERLEY. And Johnny Cash is kind of a lifelong advocate for prison reform. He really sees a lot of things that he really doesn't like there. And he really believes that they should be educational institutions, which of course includes things like teaching them skills, teaching them to express themselves in music. So that's kind of a lifelong project of his. The photo I'm standing in front of is Johnny Cash with two very important people. One is Marshall Grant, who's the bassist for his band, and the man on the left is Bob Johnston, and he's a producer at Columbia Records. And he's fairly new to working with Cash, and he's the one who says, let's do this. You want a passion project? Let's make this happen. So he makes some calls, he gets things going, does the recording. And Johnson is really known for working with artists in the 60s and 70s, and he's one of these people who can really bridge different musical genres. He also is great at listening to artists and what they really want from their records. So when he gets the tapes back, he really minimally processes them. He really wants that rawness to come forward. And that is some of what people say really made the tape so successful, is that it just seems like you're there with the prisoners and Johnny Cash in that hall. So the music is very powerful and very immediate. As far as I know, this is the first live album that's recorded in a prison. And you can see the cover album art really reflects kind of the rawness of that experience. It shows a profile of Johnny Cash, and the sweat kind of pouring down the side of his face, like it's really hot. It's basically him alone, and that was kind of the sense of the music, is that it's very raw, it's very immediate, and so there's kind of a close-up focus on his face. You can see that almost all the songs that were recorded were actually included on the album. There was just a couple that they took out. And later on, they go on to do several different concerts after this based on these songs. So June Carter and Johnny Cash get married in 1968, just a few weeks after he proposes on stage to her. And after that, they do an amazing concert to celebrate their first anniversary, and that's actually what I'm standing in front of. So this is March 1st, 1969, on their first anniversary. And I think I mentioned before that June Carter wore these much more sort of feminine evening dresses, and here we have something she's wearing to the concert where it's got these frilly sleeves, she's got her hair done, and they become this very tight couple, and they have been for years before they're actually married. They write songs together, they tour together, and following the release of the album, which had such a huge hit, they toured for almost a year. And because people really want to see Johnny Cash. She goes on to write a couple solo albums of her own, and they're married basically the rest of their lives together. So here we have June Carter Cash and Johnny Cash singing their famous song Jackson at the Anaheim Amphitheater. And this is on the anniversary of their wedding. So this is March 1st, 1969. And one reason I really love this photograph is it kind of shows her in typical performance wear, which is this beautiful dress with these high-heeled shoes. And June was a performer. She was really used to being in front of people. And she's from a very famous country western family, the Carters. And her mom was also backstage. Her sisters even sang together. So they had this whole Carter family that would come out and sing songs sometimes with Johnny. And then later on, Johnny is giving his own TV series, and they are performing, oftentimes next to him. This photo shows Cash signing autographs in San Bernardino. You can see he's got some police escort there, and there's a bunch of fans here trying to get his signature. Due to the popularity of the album, all of a sudden there was this huge interest in Cash again, which he really hadn't seen for quite a few years. And one of the kind of mementos of the concert was this songbook that was produced. It had pictures of Cash. He had just come back from a tour to the Holy Land with June, and they had filmed a whole movie there. And so he's kind of trying to change his image a little bit in the public mindset, to be somebody who's very rooted in his faith, who's very secure. So I think it's a great photo. It shows him again in his characteristic black, signing autographs. So less than 2 years after a real professional low in his life, Johnny Cash makes the cover of Life magazine. And the title is Johnny Cash, the Rough-Cut King of Country Music. And you can see he has his guitar, he's again in that characteristic black, set against kind of the wheels of this train. The image of kind of the rough-cut guy, kind of one of the people, is something that Cash, encourages a bit. And he's kind of on the rise back up to fame. He keeps reinventing himself. And he enjoys just a real wave of popularity in the late 80s and early 90s. And then he finally passes away in 2003, just a few months after June. So that's the end of our show. Thank you so much for watching our tour of the Folsom Prison concert. I'm so glad you could come on this journey with us. And I hope to see you at the Pen soon. Thanks.